Mrs. Nowak, we are all here, so I think we can start getting our meeting to order.
Are we all okay on that end? Okay. Do we need to wait for everybody to sign on before we open the meeting?
I'm just promoting everybody to panelists. And Mr. Sullivan is present. He's just logging in.
Alrighty, it looks like we're good. Okay. Okay, so let's call this meeting to order at 6:08. Let's do a roll call. Myself, I am present. Mrs. Dryden. See her on.
Present.
Oh, there's her pretty face. Okay, so we have Mr. Sullivan. Is he? I don't know why I can't hear anything.
Mr. Sullivan is present.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. What happens with last minute kids and not feeling good in every other which direction? Dr. Canby,
Present.
he's there too. Oh, I have FOMO. Dr. Ramirez. Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Romero.
Present.
Dr. Ramirez.
Present.
You know, he's there. And Mrs. Peterson.
Present.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt the agenda? Is
I so move to adopt the agenda as presented.
there a second? Jamie,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, motion carries unanimously. Okay, is there any public comment?
No public comment.
Okay. And we'll see. So at this time, we can adjourn into closed session at 6:10 PM.
Krista, we're all back if you want to go ahead and reconvene.
Sorry, I was waiting for him to add me back as a panelist. Okay, so we adjourn closed session at 6:49 and the action that was taken in closed session was the board voted to approve OAH case number 20210800659. We voted 5-0 unanimously. Let's do the official opening of the Pledge of Allegiance. So if we'll all rise. Okay, right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all. Okie dokie. Minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the meeting in October on the 19th? Oops, I apologize. My camera's off. A motion to approve the minutes, correct? Or are we just,
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
okay, is there a second? Anybody? Because I can't hear you guys because you're all on mute.
Mr. Sullivan seconded the motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Neil. Okay, all those in favor of approving the minutes from the October meeting? Aye. Aye. Okay, motion passes unanimously. Is there anyone to address the Board of Trustees in public comment?
We do not have any public comments at this time, although I see that there is an attendee with a hand raised. So I don't know if that means that there's a public comment on an agendized matter. We can ask if you're okay with that.
I'm okay with that.
Mrs. Jar, do you have a question or a comment for the board? More of a comment for the board?
I think her microphone's off. No, she,
No, it appears not.
okay.
Thank you.
Okay, on to the superintendent's report.
Okay, well, good evening, board, Board of Trustees. It's wonderful to be here with you. I have an update to superintendent's report today. I will try to be efficient with my time. I'd like to start by just acknowledging that we continue to work well under a couple of different categories that you've seen very well. I'll start with health and wellness. Right now, I wanted to start with the broader state and local updates. Probably the largest or the most significant. The most significant is the availability of vaccines for children in the community ages 5 through 11. Those have already rolled out and have started to become available for the community. Just as background, there is a mandate that vaccination be made available. Be mandatory, consistent with other vaccinations. However, there's the full implementation won't take effect until the vaccines obtain full approval. And that timeline is still on the horizon. We don't have some specifics. There's also some other components that will have to, that will probably require some addressing as to whether there will be any exemptions, as there have been in past instances of vaccine mandates. As far as the staff is concerned, there is, just to reiterate, a mandate for district staff. However, there is also, or just wanted to reiterate that we are compliant as of October 15th. We have partnered with an external agency to provide weekly testing here. We had some hiccups with that a few weeks ago, but we were able to straighten all that out and get back on track. So that's a service to staff that is going to be helpful, not just for any employees who may be unvaccinated, who must submit to weekly testing, but also for staff at large. Beyond that, the next biggest topic here is around volunteers and visitors on campus. As we have gone through the first part of the year, questions have emerged, good ones, pertaining to visitors and guests on campus. As the board is aware, we have largely limited visitors and guests. Sorry, we're fixing a couple of things here in the background. So, but we are revamping. I shouldn't say revamping entirely. We are updating our volunteer policy and practices. through the use of a volunteer matrix. There is a board policy 1240, board policy and admin regulation 1240 that we are using to narrow to create clarity about volunteers, their function on campus, visitors, their function on campus, and there will be more updates on that soon. To be sure, there's two things to consider. One is that we will be in compliance with the already existing board policy 1240 about visitors, but beyond that, with any health guidelines that that the state has put out, and that's largely through the California Department of Public Health. So that's important to keep in mind. So there will be some consistencies between visitors and guests and volunteers and our own staff, and in terms of expectations pertaining to health and wellness. Lastly, just a reminder that we continue to minimize in-person meetings to the extent possible, and that we continue to put forward our mitigation strategies to make sure that we are compliant. Moving on, just an update on our COVID dashboard. This has been recently updated. So our enrollment figures are there. That's been updated to reflect our current enrollment figures. And you have the total positive cases to date there on the right column. So this is going to be updated at least once a week. We're committing to at least once a week, but the truth of the matter is that we try to update that on an ongoing basis. Moving ahead to learning and engagement. I just have an important update to provide for the board and for the community pertaining to our framework for the future. In previous board correspondences, you've received some updates about the composition of that particular design team. That design team has now met 3 times, and I'll be turning to some of the outcomes in just a moment. But we are effectively creating, the team has started to compile a draft learner profile, which is what we're envisioning as being our horizon for the competencies and abilities that students will be able to demonstrate by the time they leave us in 8th grade. I can only speak to the process has been fantastic, having conversations from staff to community. Certain members, a group of members have both roles as both staff and parents in the district, and it's been very productive. Our next meeting is going to be is scheduled for December 7th, and that'll be our 4th meeting, with a 5th meeting to occur in January. Okay, so in the next slide, you'll see a learner profile. It's a draft learner profile. These are the competencies that have elevated to being some of the most important according to our design team. We're trying to think creatively on how to engage our students and the rest of our community on these. But you see there are critical thinker, effective communicators, creative or creativity. And then you see some additional clarification there on what those entail. This last meeting, we talked more fully about some additional descriptors in each one of those domains. So that's something that will come forward to the board and to the public, probably for our next meeting. As you see there, also global citizen, the idea that we're interconnected, but not just that, but the idea of empathy has come up quite a bit. Empowerment and confidence. And you see more than anything else, the interest was in making sure that our students were well-rounded, that yes, they were academically successful, but also well-rounded individuals. So this is just a profile in draft version, but one that has been subsequently unpacked more and more. And on that note, as we turn to the next slide, this week was a great one. This past week in particular was a great one because we got a chance to celebrate kids and celebrate their accomplishments and celebrate with our families. So we celebrated, we had 3 different awards assemblies throughout the week. Fantastic, each one in its own right. And we celebrated 3 big awards, if you will. Tiger of the Quarter, our roaring reader, and our character trait. And just the one comment about the character trait is that those character traits were developed by students and for students. So they themselves wanted to see certain character traits like kindness be really promoted. And kindness, in fact, became maybe the biggest one amongst our students. So it was great to have an opportunity to celebrate. Thank you to trustees who were able to be in attendance, Mrs. Dryden, Mrs. Romero, Dr. Camby in particular, for being there. And it was just a great opportunity to celebrate kids. And then on Monday, we were able to take a group of our kids, middle schoolers, to lunch. So that was a nice little kickoff to our week. Also on the learning front, just continuing to come back to things that we were not able to do last year, but that have become really important to our community and to our kids. Sixth grade outdoor camp happened. And so that was a great experience, very memorable for our kids. And I just have a few images there of their departure and their arrival, their subsequent arrival, safe arrival. So it was just great to see, and speaking to the kids, just the little adventures that they got themselves into and being with their friends really became part of the experience. So we're really fortunate to have that support of our PFO, of our parents, just as an absolute group, with their contributions, with their support, and just with making sure that we're able to have a successful event. Coming back to a topic that has been a standing one in my reports, has been independent study. Our independent study program is still underway. And I think one of the biggest developments there is that some families have indicated to us that they plan on returning back to campus as soon as their students are fully vaccinated. And that's in that age range of 5 to 11. So we could see some fluctuation in those participating in independent study, potentially coming back to us to be in person. Let's see, moving right along, a big component of our instructional program is all of the other activities that we engage in, co-curricular athletics, and expanded learning. Our girls volleyball team, couldn't be happier for them, division winners in 7th and 8th grade. Mrs. Oliveras was just tremendous in getting our kiddos. I mean, it's really really something to admire, the way in which she has developed this program over a number of years. Obviously, her love and her ability to coach is at the heart of it, but also the participation and commitment of all the girls who take part is tremendous. Very successful season that just concluded this past month. We have resumed as part of the Camarillo Independent Sports League, doing flag football. That program ends this week. That schedule concludes this week. And we continue to abide by the health guidelines specific to each independent sport and league. That's just a reminder. Our full steam ahead, just to take a look back, they put on a really wonderful event, our Spooktacular, on Saturday, October 30th. Well over 100 individuals, participants, family members, community, primarily kids. It was an outdoor event with different stations throughout the campus, and just couldn't be more proud of Mr. Oliveras, of all the entire staff, and the kids who designed these activities and served as hosts for all of our guests. Our mock trial has very successfully gotten underway. And I mean, I just can't say enough about it, about the potential that it yields. So thank you to Mrs. Romero for spearheading those efforts. And we'll look forward to providing more updates on that group soon. And finally, field trips. We have an upcoming field trip. It'll be soon enough, in February, to Simi, and that'll be for our 7th and 8th grade students. We have an informational night on Thursday, where we're hoping to just provide more clarity for our families about what that entails and what that looks like for our kids. So more updates to come on that for sure. And I'll go ahead and conclude with a review of attendance. Our attendance figures are there. It's been challenging. Attendance has been challenging. And it's for all of the reasons that we probably can imagine, but are worth reiterating. Our families, it's been a hard space to navigate. We have asked our parents and families to be very conservative, very cautious, to stay home whenever a child feels ill, and they have complied, and they have worked with us at every turn, notifying us, informing us, keeping us up to date. Of course, the downside of that is that it's going to be reflected in our attendance figures. So we're still trying to find the appropriate way to, of course, stress the importance of attendance, but needless to say, safety and well-being happen to be the primary drivers at this juncture, and therefore, I certainly wish these figures were different, but I fully understand why they're not at this particular time. Lastly, just upcoming events, a few upcoming events. We have our fall break next week. That'll be a full week. Then we're kicking off our Mesa Cares campaign. So more information on that to come for sure. And we are looking forward to having an 8th grade banquet on December 17th. It'll be outdoors. We're still coordinating some of those details. And then winter break around December 20th. Some of the major milestones coming up here. There are a few other events that we're still working on, and those will be provided for the board and the public through either the memo or our Mesa Matters bulletin. So with that said, if there are any questions or comments from the board, would be glad to answer or respond.
I just want to say I'm proud of you guys. I know it hasn't been easy. I know the environment that we're in is definitely difficult. And the reflection in attendance, I mean, I know you guys really try to hone in on that the best way you can for the board to have an understanding as to what's going on and how things are progressing. But given the circumstances, I think you guys I mean, you're doing a great job. I think one of the slides further up top that you mentioned, I apologize. I think I only had one COVID case for the children K through 8th, and then we've had 11 so far. So, I mean, I think that goes to say that parents are being cautious. They are keeping their kids home. Yes, we want the ADA, but at the same time, we'd prefer to have everybody healthy and keep everyone in school versus, the domino effect. So I appreciate what you guys are doing.
Thank you. And, I'm glad that Ms. Cousineau is here with us this evening, because she has been instrumental in so much background work, so much communication with families. She has been incredible, and I'm glad that we have her on board, because we're lucky to have her. And so many others, Irene, Jolana, Ms. Kuklinski has been coordinating a ton of things around contact tracing, communication with Ventura County Public Health. So there's a lot that happens behind the scenes that most people don't see, but that are very important to acknowledge.
Okay, well, if you are done with this, we can move on. The next one is number 9, the board members' reports and communications. Correspondence. We did receive a correspondence from the Ventura County Office of Ed in regards to our unaudited actuals for the district for 2020 to 2021. We did receive for our LCAP and our adopted budget for the year, based off of the VCOE's review, we passed. We were approved for our budget. So good job, Tammy, for always keeping us in line. We appreciate you. And obviously the district and Dr. Mears and everybody else. So that is the correspondence that I know we have. Is there any other correspondence that anyone received? No? Okay. Was there any board member reports or communications? No? Okay. And anybody see any members' interest or concerns? No. Okie dokie. So on to the consent agenda. We are going to see if there is a motion to approve. In one motion, finally got it, 9 months to 10 months in. Okay, a motion to approve the consent agenda as stated. Is there a motion for that?
I move to approve the consent agenda items A through D.
A through D. Is there a second? Yeah, second. Okay, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda items A through D?
Aye.
I think we did. Okay. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously. A through D. Okay, we will go ahead and get into the information. Is there a motion to approve the California Voting Rights Act VCRA presentation provided by the cooperative? Wait, this is information. I apologize. So can we just have our California Voting Rights Act VCRA presentation provided by the cooperative strategies?
That's just informational.
Aren't we
And so
supposed
it's,
to have that
that's just
discussion?
a presentation, is it not?
But weren't we having that dual presentation in this meeting? No, someone, hello.
It's the second public hearing of the
Slide that
of the
we,
CVRA slides.
okay.
And so Dr. Mears is trying to get him connected right now.
Oh, okay, so, okay. I knew we had to have two and I was confused.
Good evening. I'm Andrew Bishop from Cooperative Strategies, and I'm here to present the CVRA information.
How are you doing, Mr. Bishop? So I just wanted to frame the discussion for this evening. I know that we, as Mrs. Dryden, Trustee Dryden indicated, this is our second presentation, our second hearing, and it's the pre-map hearing. I know that the information has been sent out to all board members. The presentation is largely intended to gather input from the board and from the public pertaining to very specific items that you have. I know, Mr. Bishop, a couple of questions were forwarded to you previously by one of our trustees. So I turn it over to you to go ahead and walk us through the presentation, knowing that we did have a presentation very similar to this a month ago.
All right. Let me get it up on my screen here. Do I have the ability to share my screen?
We can provide that for you, yes.
Okay. It's not letting me do it currently.
Okay, hold on just a moment, okay?
Of course.
Okay, can you attempt it now?
It's telling me that I can't share while another participant is sharing their screen. Okay, great. Can you all see the presentation now? All right, thank you. So we're here just to talk about the trustee area process. This was discussed at last month's meeting. So this is the same information, and we can kind of go through to make sure that we're getting that public comment or comments from the board. Background is, we're evaluating trustee areas based on the California Voting Rights Act, which took effect January 1, 2003. The CVRA prohibits the use of at-large elections if such elections impair the ability of protected classes to elect candidates of their choice or its ability to influence the outcome of an election. So there's three types of elections in California, one being at-large elections, which Mesa Union School District currently has. There are from trustee area elections, which is a hybrid of the two, and there are by trustee area elections. So that's what we're examining here, where we establish specific voting areas within the district, and candidates who want to run for the board must reside in those areas, and only people who reside in those areas can vote for those candidates. So here are the key dates we're sitting at right now. So our first pre-map hearing was October 19th. We're sitting now at the required second pre-map hearing. And then after this point, over the next 2 weeks, we would draft scenarios based on any input we have from the board or the public. After which we would review the first set of scenarios, draft maps at the December 14th meeting. And then any additional meetings in January or February are yet to be scheduled. So we will play that by ear after we get to the December 14th meeting. So these are considerations that we have to look at when creating, moving to by trustee area elections. First and foremost, we need to make sure that all of our trustee areas are roughly equal in population. So that's total population, that's not voting age, that's not, adults only, that's total population regardless of age. We need to have a roughly equal balance. The areas need to be drawn to comply with the Federal Voting Rights Act. They must be compact, contiguous as much as possible. We do want to respect communities of interest where possible. So, the community of interest can be based on an ethnicity, a religion, a language spoke. Those are all different examples. When we are drawing trustee areas, we want to follow man-made features if possible, roads, highways, or other natural features, creeks, rivers, mountains, where possible. And then, other things we can consider are respecting incumbency if possible, and, looking at other types of, features in the community, parks, other things like that that may be natural kind of breaks in the community. So this was the 2020 census that we looked at previously. Right now, your district is comprised of 3,628 citizens based on the 2020 census, of which nearly 3,000 are of voting age. When we look at the breakdown of the voting age population, people who are eligible to vote, citizen voting age, you see that 54 or 57% of your voting age is white, classified as white by the census, which means that we do have other groups which just aren't as well represented. The most common or the most populous group after the white population is the Hispanic Latino population, which comprises 26% of your voting base today. And as you can see here, this map shows what we're calling the CVAP Hispanic Latino density. So it's the percentage of voters in each of those voting area or each of those census blocks. And it's not necessarily representative of the total population, but just the percentage share of Hispanic Latino voters to total voting age population. And I believe there was some questions on the total population by census block, and I have that information that we can share after if anybody wants to see that. So what are we, how are lines going to be drawn? How, what are going to be major considerations for your district? That's what we're here to discuss, to get input from the board, any input from the public, and we want to make sure that what's shared tonight, that we incorporate that for any scenarios that we bring back in December. So again, examples of things, input we may see, thinking, Highway 232 or Highway 118 may be natural divides, North Rose Avenue. Other things, it may be good to keep the south side together, or downtown. I just, I want to hear what the board has to say, what the community has to say, to make sure that we're incorporating what needs to be done. And so from there, I have other maps to share that have those total populations of the census block, so you can see how that shakes out, if you guys feel that would be beneficial to look at.
Mr. Bishop, as the board is kind of gathering their thoughts and comments, it would be good perhaps to see those maps if you have them available.
Okay. So first we looked at, these are all going to be based off that initial CDAP map that we looked at. Can you all see this map again? Okay, so what this is showing, each number in these blocks shows the total population as determined by the 2020 census. And what you can see here, we have large census blocks kind of out in the foothills here, but they aren't very heavily populated. You have, there's this census block here to the north, which is probably our most populated block outside of kind of the core down here in the close to Camarillo. But what you can see down here, we have many tiny census blocks, and this area right here comprises over 50% of your district's total population, just in this small quadrant. So there are some, as you get over here towards Rio, there are some pockets of neighborhoods that are, will comprise a trustee area, but the real trick will be kind of in this portion, how we cut this up to make sure that we're representing everybody in the community.
Okay, I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, so 118 turns and there's 26 in that orange area right there where your mouse is. Oh, where? Because there's 2 houses in there.
This is all based on the census. So this is how the census
So,
tabulated.
Are we double checking the census? And I'm not asking to be ignorant in that fashion, but I mean, literally Mesa School is right there at that turn and there's no houses. I understand the impact behind that, because then you've got, you may even, are they pulling in like Bella Vista and all that, Neil? Because that's where you're at, right? So that's that whole area. But I don't understand where the 26 comes in, even the 19. Is that like so many people? Can we break it down further to how many homes per?
They have not released the information on the number of homes by census block.
Okay.
yet. So the information that's been released has been very basic at this point, just totally giving us the information on total population, 18 and over, and then the state also provides that citizen voting age population.
And then Highway 232, I've never actually honestly heard it referred to as that, so it kind of was a little perplexing initially.
Okay.
But is that basically, is that vineyard or is that rice?
I would have to
It's
check.
Vineyard.
Okay.
Vineyard, okay. Okay, thank you, Neil. I just need to figure out where I was at.
So just looking at the map and knowing that we have 5 districts, each one of them is going to have roughly 750 voting age people in the, or I'm sorry, population total, not just voting age. It looks like the 2 big population areas are probably going to have to be 2 separate areas in that southern kind of border there, and then incorporate some of the smaller areas, and then another larger one kind of to the east and kind of center and then west. I mean, it just seems like that's the logical way to kind of divide that up, that we kind of get equal numbers of people and representative in equal communities or like communities.
And yeah, correct. And we are bounded by the geography of the census block. So that's how the data has been released, and that's kind of what we're charged with in using and evaluating the data and creating these scenarios, is utilizing that 20 census data. So we will be, there are only going to be so many ways to kind of cut the pie, so to speak, moving forward. But it'll be important for us to just discuss and update the map, here for things that may be confusing, like Highway 232.
Can you send us a copy of this map?
Of course, I can, and I have a couple different maps here we can look at. This was the total this is total voting age population here, or total population.
Mr. Bishop, perhaps you could send me those, that packet, and I will make sure that the board receives it.
We're on this presentation. Yeah. Send it.
Is it the same presentation you had before?
Yes.
We were not provided with this map though previously.
No, these maps, I was asked this morning to tabulate to make sure we have it, in case there were questions. So I will provide these, I can provide these in the presentation or just as standalone pictures that the board can view.
Yeah, and just to clarify, this represents the total population, correct?
Correct, and that's what
Regardless-
we're charged. Go ahead.
Regardless of voting status, race.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah, so we're charged with creating balanced areas for total population regardless of age, citizenship status, or any other factors. So that's first and foremost what we're trying to achieve is equal balance amongst all 5 trustee areas that we propose.
okay. Yes. But the shaded area, although it represents the Hispanic vote, does this map also represent the Hispanic population that votes?
Yeah, so this map here, again, we highlight the Hispanic voting age population in the census blocks. And the numbers you see here are the Hispanic Latino voting age population. So these would be eligible voters to vote in the election.
Out of the ones that are in deep purple, blood red, how many of those are voting Hispanics?
So this right, all of these numbers here are voting Hispanics on this map. So
Okay.
there was,
Oh, this is a different map. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm looking at a
yeah,
different map.
I'm
Okay.
sorry. So this represented the total population. So you see here, this area has 18 total people. This block has 32. And if we look at the other map, now of those 18, 7 are Hispanic Latino voting age. And here we have 12.
Got it.
So are we, Sandra, are we in theory dividing this up as a board or as a community for based off of the Hispanic underrepresented vote, like we discussed last time with all of these? I'm trying to understand that. Or are we doing it based off of, like you mentioned before, the entire population? How does, because I noticed like that one area I was discussing with you earlier, Andrew, it went from 26 to 8.
Yep.
So
There's 26 total people within that voting or within that census block, of which 8 of them are Hispanic Latino voting age adults.
So are we breaking up the pie based off of best represent the Latinos as the most underrepresented entity in our districts? I mean, is that what we're going for? And I'm asking because I'm just not clear on it.
We are trying to make sure that if there are blocks of Hispanic Latino voters or other groups that, that we can group together, that we are making sure that we pair those communities together so we don't dilute their voting voice.
Gotcha. Okay.
So,
Thank you.
yeah.
And
So
that is what the Voting Rights Act basically says. Is that correct?
correct. So
It's just so interesting to see the maps go from these big numbers and break down based off of races and ethnicities, regardless how they shift. So it's interesting.
and we did. I do have 2 other maps that break down the Asian voting age population and the African American voting age population. If you would like to look at those.
Please.
Okay. So this here is represents the, I didn't update the colors here, so disregard that right now. But what the numbers represent here are the Black voting age population. And what you can see here is this census block is primarily where we have our Black voting age population down in the southwest portion of the district.
So looking at this, that 177 towards the bottom, that's
Mhm.
going to be an important number
Yep.
to keep
So-
together.
Yeah, it will stay together because it's all in one block. So that will be, it depends on how that block is paired, if it's going to be paired with some of these blocks down here, or if it's going to be better paired over here, or somewhere in between. But most of the Black voting age population is within that one census block for your community.
So is that by Real Mesa High School?
I believe so.
It would be interesting to have a board outing, honestly, because
Would it help too if with these maps, if I put on the high school and other things there?
no, I mean, it's all, I mean, yes, for me, I can't do east, west, north, south. It's like I need landmarks myself
Okay.
personally. I'm
That's fine.
awful with direction. It's just interesting though, because, and I don't want to sound completely ignorant. I know the statement's going to come out that way, but you just don't see a lot of African-American families. I feel like even in Mesa, like you just don't see them around the area. And to think that we have 177 people to represent in one block, to me is mind blowing. So that says a lot in regards to what we've got going on as a community, because I would have never in a million years guessed that. I figured we were mostly Hispanic given our community. We're very ag driven. That really blows my mind.
That was the Black population, and then we also did it for the Asian population. And I'll pull that up right now. So again, what you see here is your Asian voting age population is all centered right here along the edge with Camarillo. Literally, as you escape from here, kind of the main populated area of your district, there are none except for up here closer to Ventura. You got 4 adults. Everything else is centered right here. So no matter how you cut the pie here, you know, we will probably have to separate these two portions of the Asian population, with the majority being kind of on the west side.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll provide all of these maps so you guys can have them and look at them and compare. And I'll make sure that we also put in some landmarks just to help gauge where exactly everything is.
Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate it. And does anybody else have any other questions or comments?
Just a comment, Mrs. Nowak. Mr. Bishop, if you could forward those to me, I'd like to make sure that A, they're available.
Yep.
We can amend our board agenda to reflect these maps for the public and to make sure that they're available for our next board meeting, our next
Perfect.
regular schedule.
I'll forward these first to you immediately after this meeting, and then I'll work on updating the maps with landmarks for the next presentation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, if there's no more questions or concerns, we can go ahead and move forward with item B, which is the Educator Effectiveness Block Grant. So is there a motion to, what additional information? I'm sorry. So go ahead, Dr. Maris.
Oh, well, thank you, Mrs. Nowak, and trustees. I actually have included a background presentation there for the board's and the public's background on this particular plan. There is no action that will be required this evening. However, this is a discussion and it will need to come back in December for action. So I just wanted to, some of this has been in the background material that the board has received, but for the interest of the public, we have received an allocation. It's the latest categorical program that has been brought forward by the state. It's an Educator Effectiveness Block Grant. There have been iterations of this block grant previously. In my prior district, I'm very familiar with this block grant. And in the background material, there is a breakdown of the allowable expenses that are the allowable expenses for which these funds are to be utilized. With that said, there is a breakdown very broadly around the coming years, and the draft plan is there available. Ms. Cousineau, if you could just click on that draft plan. The plan itself, please. Section 8, there you go. And the idea being that there are going to be ongoing needs around professional development, and teacher induction is where we're going to concentrate our funds over the course of 3 budgeted years, starting in 2022, 2023. Right now, we have other funding sources that we're using for our current year. So the idea would be to give us an opportunity to continue with some of those efforts that we have either commenced or will commence in the near term. And then, of course, there is an additional allocation preliminarily earmarked for mental health and social emotional support for students. Those needs, quite frankly, are only now coming into view after a few months of having our kids on site. We're still very much assessing overall. Some of the needs have become very acutely apparent, and others are still developing. So want to provide us an opportunity to see that work through and those services through into the coming years. So with that said, I'll go ahead and pause there. Ms. Peterson is here to answer any questions pertaining to the budget itself. But we're here just to answer any questions. And if there happen not to be any, we will bring this back for board approval in the month of December.
So I guess I'll start with a comment. I was really excited to see that we're looking into both professional development and the social emotional support for the kids for the next several years, because I think that's one of those things, like you were saying, it's just coming to light and it is needed. And so my question is, do we think allocating it over these 3 years is giving us enough in each year to accomplish what we want to, or does it make sense to break it up into 2 years and give us more fund in each of those 2 years?
So the good news is that we'll have flexibility. These plans are intended to be earmarks, preliminary plans. So if we needed to do some shifting within that, we've already done that with other prior plans. It's understood that the need will drive those decisions. This would not be a total fund allocated for professional learning, but rather just this particular fund. It could wind up being less. We could backload it to the future years, like 23, 24. Perhaps it becomes more heavily in that year. I think giving ourselves some flexibility would be important, to your point, because right now we're being asked to execute a plan that is when the school year has really just begun. There's many other points of information that will help dictate how those funds will be used, including how we expense out the funds that we've already received or already been allocated. Another point of consideration is what's yielded fully in January or February around the work of the design team, the work of the LCAP committee, and so on, that'll come in the spring. So I think we'll have a better understanding of this as the year goes on. And if we needed to make some adjustments, I believe we'll have the flexibility to do so.
Any other further questions or discussions?
Tammy's giving a presentation right now, so
Thank you, Neil.
I don't know if there are any other comments or commentary or questions from the board. Otherwise, if you're open, I will bring back this item on for approval in December.
Okay, so it looks like we're moving forward. Let's see, get into 12. So action discussion items. A, is there a motion to approve the consideration of the proposal with BR and Associates Incorporated for the DSA project inspection services for per DSA PR 13-01 for the Mesa Union Elementary School window replacement and HVAC upgrade?
I move that we approve the BR and Associates Inc. For the DSA project inspection services for the Macy Elementary window replacement and HVAC upgrade
Is there a
as
second?
stated.
Oh, Jamie,
I will
Okay.
second.
Any discussion? No? Okay, so all of those in favor? Aye. Okay, all those opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously. On to 12B, is there a motion to consider the adoption of the board policy revisions for September 2020? Didn't we need to change that to October?
Yeah, September is when they were initially presented and they were brought, that was the first reading. Sorry, the first reading was it would have been October. So yes, you're correct.
Okay, so October, so is there a motion for the consideration of adoption for the October 2021 board policy revisions as stated?
I so move.
Is there a second? Any discussion?
Mrs. Nowak, I just wanted to offer up a commentary on this. I know that board policy and administrative regulation revisions, they're very tedious, very challenging, because there's just an awful lot of content. So if the board is interested in having me to develop a different system or has thoughts on how to make those a bit more streamlined, I'm open to that idea. Just please know that CSBA is the body that is intended to do that. If there's a way for me to provide a high level view of perhaps the impact to our particular school or district, I would just want to hear thoughts and opinions from the board so that there's consistency and clarity for everybody.
I would just comment that
The majority of this policy is code-driven. So there's not much we can do to change. There's a little bit of discretion that we have. Possibly you can highlight where there is discretion, but I mean, if we do that, these meetings are probably going to run pretty long. So most of it is code-driven, and there's not much we can do to change.
And that's what
I
Dr.
guess,
Go ahead, Jamie.
okay. I guess what I was hoping for is we may not necessarily want to change the policy, but we need to be aware of how it affects us. So how is it applicable and does it change what we're currently doing? Because some of these policies may change a current plan we have written, may change a certain program that we implement. And we need to be aware of the timeline that policy requires change. So we may not have too many comments on the policy itself, but we will want to know how it directly affects us, or if it's something we're already implementing, and so there's no change. And I think a lot of these policies don't require change because we're already doing something similar, but then that's very helpful to know. It requires no action on our part.
I have to say, I kind of agree with Jamie. I do agree with Sandra in the fact that we don't want to have long prolonged meetings for hours on end going over all the revisions. But I think if we could receive those like Dr. Amaris gives us in our packets ahead of time to kind of go through, and if there's anything that's alarming or we have questions about, we can bring it up at that time. There's been quite a few of these. I know they are code that I've abstained from because I just don't agree with them, whether they're code or not. So I think with what is going on with, like Jamie is mentioning, with how we're trying to drive the school and have some type of clarity, I think a little bit of a 30,000-foot overview would be nice.
Along with this, I'm just going to chime in real quick. One is that sometimes these codes and regulations that we're approving are not applicable to us, meaning that they're only applicable to grades 9 through 12. And so there's no reason for us to adopt them, or we should chop them out. We should also be aware of the fact that these are recommendations by CSBA, which is fine, but it's still our responsibility to look at it and say whether or not we're going to adopt those. Lastly, these are recommendations coming from the state and from CSBA, but we as a board can act on what's in the best interest of what the school district is. We can write our own policies that are independent of what the state says. If it affects what's here, you have to be within the law. I see you shaking your head, but we can write something that may be specific and unique to this school district, that it can be within the bounds of the law, that's important for our school district, that may not be applicable to someone in an inner city, for example.
Well-
So we've never done that. I'm just saying that as a rule, we don't. We do have a little bit of latitude. And yes, we've always adopted these as they've been presented. But I'm going to tell you, over the course of my tenure here, is that there's been numerous times where we've chopped things out simply because they were not applicable to this school district. I can't think of a time where we've gone out and said, well, there's something about our plumbing system or a school district, how the gas lines function that may not be applicable to anybody else, that we need to address to make sure that we have an emergency plan, for example. This is how we do things.
I read some of the policies, and I'm in disagreement in terms of whether we can adopt a policy that is in conflict with either federal, state, or local agency. I don't think that we can do that. There are some sections that allow us some discretion to adopt some policy, and that discretion is given to us by either the state, federal, or the local agency. For example, I came across one that says during staff development days, the district has discretion to incorporate how can classified staff reach effectively teach children, which methods can they use. So that's discretionary for the school to be able to implement, but there are many, I would say 90% of it that we have to adopt by code.
I never said that we should be in conflict.
That been not applicable, like about working age students. I think that you affect us since we're in K through 8. So I think we chose to not ratify that one. But some of them I do like Jamie's idea of these are all revisions, and so most of them have been in there before. And usually the revision is either changes or not changes, and how that affects us. And if it has no effect on us, and that's our responsibility once you go through and peruse these and make sure check, because that will affect us. But as Sandra stated, some of them there is discretion. They say, okay, have staff development days, but it's up to you to figure out how the best way to do it using technology and how you choose to do that. But they are very broad guidelines.
Okay, so let me try to summarize what I heard. Obviously, the board is at the discretion of the board. As a board, has latitude and discretion over some of the wordsmithing or the components of any particular policy. I think the question that I was asking pertaining to my role, supporting you, either informing your decision or clarifying the questions. So what I'll do is I will try to, as background, provide some on some choice policies, some information that might sunshine some impact or ways in which these policies may impact, whether it's our operations, our program, or our function. Does that seem fair? I may not be able to do all of them, being very specific and judicious about which ones, be able to send some information in advance, focus perhaps some attention on particular policies. Does that seem fair?
That's fine.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
all of those in favor of adopting the consideration for the October 2021 board policy revisions as stated? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, all those opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously. Okay, on to 13A, personnel. So consideration, is there a motion for the consideration of approval of the hiring of the following classified and confidential staff? Paula Ruiz, cafeteria worker, and Jennifer Romero, paraprofessional. And Mrs. Romero, would you mind putting your,
Yes.
thank you. Is there a
I
motion?
move that we approve Paula Ruiz as a cafeteria worker effective November 8th and Jennifer Romero as a paraprofessional special ed effective November 8th.
Okay, is there a second? I'm guessing Jamie, because I saw your mic come on and off. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, Neil. Okay, so all of those, is there any discussion? No? Okay, so all of those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, all those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, 13B, is there a motion for the consideration of approval of the hiring of the following certified staff? Leslie Schwartz, temporary teacher, effective December 6, 2021.
Make a motion to approve the hiring of Leslie Schwartz, temporary teacher, effective December 6, 2021.
Is there
And I
a
will
second? Oh, Jamie, is there any discussion? No? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously. 13C, is there a motion for consideration of the approval of the reclassification of the following classified staff of Jose Alavias?
I move that we approve Jose Olivas to be reclassified from a facility worker to a bus driver / facility workers effective November 1.
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? Talking to myself. All of those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, all those opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously. On to item 14, items for future consideration. Our first interim report, annual reorganization, and our California Voting Rights Act trustee area maps. Future meetings is December 14th, 2021 at 6 p.m. And we are adjourning at 7:56 p.m.
Just want to make a note that December 14th meeting is a week earlier than typical because of the holiday break, correct?
No.
It's not?
Okay,
Correct. That was a change that was made a few years ago.
Okay, I stand corrected, but it is earlier than our typical meetings, as everybody's aware of that.
It is, yes. It doesn't fall in our regular pattern of the third Tuesday of the month.
so it's the second, basically, right?
That is correct.
Okay. Okay, so our next meeting is December 14th, 2021 at 6 p.m., the second Tuesday instead of the third, and we can adjourn at 7:56 p.m. Thank you, guys. I apologize for having to be here. Miss you all.